Yeah. Analytics off the chain, other channels not the same. Jake and Kyle, you know the name. Headliner Nation, we running the game. I'm a headliner.
What is going on, Headliner Nation? Jake, Fantasy Headliners. Hopefully everybody's doing well out there. Today we're here in week 16 talking about some running backs we're going to start and sit, and I'm doing my best to keep a smile on my face so it looks like I'm happy. But on the inside, I'm absolutely dying. From week 15, fantasy football was an absolute nightmare for so many of us. I had a playoff team that led the league in scoring, only score 76 points last week. I ain't gonna cut it in the playoffs. That team is what you would like to call eliminated at this point. So what's gonna happen here in week 16? I would love to just sit here and make sweet eye contact with you and be like, listen, week 15 was bad, but week 16 is gonna be so much better. I can't say that because you know what? Week 16 is going to have its own set of problems. It's not going to be any easier, and do not be surprised if we have underperforming studs here once again. That's just like the world we live in right now. The most strangest, whatever. It's a horrible end of the season here for so many people that worked so hard to get to the fantasy playoffs, and now they're finding themselves dealing with all this crap here to end the season. But we're still going to go through every matchup, every game, every player, try to figure out who may be the safer options here, because at this point, we just want people who are going to play and get touches. I mean, that's what we're looking for. We're not trying to be too cute. We're not trying to do anything stupid here. We just want some volume. We want our guys to touch the ball so they have an opportunity to score here this week. So that's what we're going to do. We'll dive into week 16 here in a second. But how do we do in week 15? Well, was it our best week? No. Was it our worst week? No, neither. So out of the 63 running backs we talked about last week, gave a start or sit designation to that played, 43 of them were correct for an accuracy percentage of 68%. Got some of our bigger hits and misses up here on the screen miss-wise. Jeff Wilson Jr. decided to play football this past week. Damn it, Devin Singletary out there scoring some fantasy points. Craig Reynolds, he's getting ready for tax season here pretty soon, but Doom went out there and put up another solid game. Some of the bigger hits, we got Donta Foreman, James Robinson, finally, FU Urban Meyer, and then Zeke Elliott. Didn't look great, but at least he performed at a time when people needed him. Some of the better hits here for week 15, but now we're going to dive into week 16, and we're going to kick it off here Thursday night football. Been kind of weird, right? We had football on Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, getting Wednesday off, and then all of a sudden we're back at it here Thursday night for the San Francisco 49ers and Tennessee Titans. Now, when I started to dive into this matchup, do a little bit of research, yes, I can read. I know that surprises a few of you out there. I saw the reports that they are, quote unquote, encouraged by the progress of Elijah Mitchell. And are they doing that just to screw us over here in week 16? Because I can totally see that happening. Suck us in like a tractor beam. Hey, Elijah Mitchell is active. And then he goes out there and Kyle Shanahan tweets something like, oh, he's in line for a huge workload. And then the dude gets like 5 touches for 10 yards and absolutely screws us over. I could see that happening, all while Jeff Wilson Jr. probably gets like 20 touches on our bench, scoring 25 fantasy points, and it helps absolutely no one. Because that totally sounds like something that could happen here in the fantasy playoffs of 2021 fantasy football. I mean, just a few days ago, Elijah Mitchell was having knee swelling that they were concerned about. What happened? How did it magically heal? Did he get a visit from Dalvin Cook's doctor? Because I don't know what happened, but things just seemed to change overnight. And now we add in the fact that this is not an easy matchup going up against the Tennessee Titans. The only thing that Tennessee does pretty well consistently is bottle up the running game. They allow only 15 fantasy points per game to opposing running backs, and they just shut down Najee Harris in week 15. I would love to avoid this backfield altogether if I could. But last week, Jeff Wilson Jr. looked pretty good. It was against the Atlanta Falcons, though. If Elijah Mitchell is active on a short week here, Thursday night football, in a tough matchup going up against the Tennessee Titans, my life, because this is going to be a very difficult decision to make. If I had to guess, I think it's still Jeff Wilson Jr. going in to this short week ball game. If I had to select somebody in this backfield, it's going to be Jeff Wilson Jr. as of right now. Like I said, I would love to avoid this altogether. He's going to be a start, but not highly ranked in my rankings this week. For Tennessee, a little bit more of a defined role, right, for D'Onta Foreman. At least we kind of know he's the lead guy in this backfield. He has 100 yards rushing now in 2 out of his last 3 games, and also has had 20-plus touches in 2 of his last 3 games. Niners, though, not the easiest to run against as well, allowing only 16 fantasy points per game. Let me ask you this question, though. If D'Onta Foreman goes out there and scores you right around 13, 14, 15, 16 fantasy points per game, which is what San Francisco allows, are you going to be happy? Because at this point in time, I would be doing jumping jacks, cartwheels, somersaults, whatever. I would run around the street with my shirt off, rubbing my nipples if I could get 16 fantasy points this week out of D'Onta Foreman. So for that reason, he's going to be a start, but a lower end start. He's just not somebody who gives you that boost of confidence that you need heading into the weekend, but he is somebody who's performing and getting volume here right now. Now, last week I said that I only hip thrust into Sunday games because we keep it classy over here. Well, that kind of backfired. So you know what? We're going full send this week. Thrust it in to Saturday football now, where we have the Cleveland Browns and Green Bay Packers. Now, how are the COVID issues in Cleveland this week? Because I know that was a huge issue last week. I see players starting to come off. Austin Hooper's already been in the news here that he's been off. And these things are going to be changing like all the time. This is probably going to be something that's outdated by the time this is released here in just a couple hours, because things are changing so quickly. We don't know who all comes back. Does Kareem Hunt play? I mean, we know he's had that ankle injury, plus he was on the COVID IR as well. We know we start Nick Chubb. That's a must, right? The guy's going to go out there and get you 18 plus touches every single week. You never sit Nick Chubb. As for Kareem Hunt, though, I can't see him at least playing a full workload on a Saturday game in which he's coming off an injury and the COVID IR. So for right now, still going to sit Kareem Hunt. Green Bay only allows right around 16 fantasy points per game. However, they have allowed 100-plus rushing yards now in back-to-back games. So rub your Chubb this week. Rub it vigorously. Whatever you got to do to get some points out of Nick Chubb. For Green Bay, on paper, it looks like A.J. Dillon is a problem for this backfield and Aaron Jones, right? But he only played 23 snaps. That's only 37% of the snaps did A.J. Dillon get. He just happened to be the one that found the touchdown on the ground and kind of boost his fantasy productions. Jones had almost double the touches and played in 63% of the snaps. Now, Cleveland, they allow right around 18 fantasy points per game. Myles Garrett is banged up. We know that. We know this defense could be missing more players due to COVID here this week. Aaron Rodgers playing at an MVP level. The passing game is fully opened up. It's going to help the running game as well. We're going to continue to start Aaron Jones. As for A.J. Dillon, he's more of a deeper league multi-flex type play. He's somebody who's very touchdown dependent. He could get you right around 15 touches for 60 yards, but if he doesn't find the end zone every single week, he's going to hurt your fantasy lineup. Doesn't quite have that explosiveness, that big playability, or the passing work that we see going the way of Aaron Jones, and that's why I'm sticking with Aaron Jones here once again this week. Which leads us to the second game of our doubleheader, the Indianapolis Colts and Arizona Cardinals. And does everyone realize kind of what we're seeing here with Jonathan Taylor? I mean, this dude has 42 runs of 10 yards or more. That is more than 16 NFL teams. Not just players on those teams, the entire teams. The guy is absolutely crazy. Plus, he has 73 red zone carries. 73. That's the most in the NFL. He's got 92 carries that resulted in a first down. The guy is a machine. This stat right here. I mean, I know you guys already know you're going to start him. I mean, that's not why you're watching the show, but these stats are fun to even talk about. He has 1,010 yards after contact. If you only include his yards after contact, he would rank 5th in the NFL in rushing. This dude is on another level. I mean, I think you should start this guy. I think he's pretty good. I think he could carry you to a fantasy championship. I think he could be the fantasy MVP on the season. I mean, we're not too worried about Nyheim Hines. He's had less than 10 touches now in 5 straight games. So yeah, I think we'll start with Jonathan Taylor. Now for Arizona, is anyone else kind of getting those vibes? Like, I'm giving her all she's got, Captain. I don't have the power. Like, that's kind of what I feel like when I watch my own Arizona Cardinals. I mean, it's not looking good here as of right now. They look absolutely horrible in back-to-back games, and now they get a matchup against the Indianapolis Colts, the 5th best team in the NFL against the run. You have to think that Chase Edmonds kind of got worked back into the workload last week, and now he's in line for more and more touches as the season progresses. Now, we loved James Conner when he was on that streak of being a running back one here in fantasy football. But moving forward, both of these guys are just going to be flex plays. They're both going to be starts. It's kind of similar to the Denver backfield. I think you can say, like with Melvin Gordon and Javonte Williams, these are two guys who are going to eat into each other's ceiling. However, their floors are fairly safe, and they both have that opportunity to go out and score 20 points. That's why they're both going to be starts. They're both going to be a little bit lower in the rankings just because they're going to eat into each other's production, but they both have that opportunity to go out there and help you win here in Week 16. But like I said, keeping it classy, that's out the window. It's time to thrust it over to Sunday football now for the Detroit Lions and Atlanta Falcons. And apparently Craig Reynolds, I know that a lot of people said he was bagging groceries, doing taxes, myself included. I mean, he just doesn't seem like an NFL running back. Just doesn't get that feeling when you hear Craig Reynolds. You know what I mean? I feel like the guy that just sold me with some car insurance. However, the guy playing pretty good football. He has 216 total yards combined in the last 2 games, but don't get ahead of yourself. Because now all of a sudden reports are coming out that DeAndre Swift and Jamal Williams, they're back at practice. Because they're back at practice, does that mean that they're going to start and play for sure? No, they could be limited. They could be game time decisions. In my opinion, why? Like, what are you doing, Detroit? You're going to suck all year long to try to win games end of season that are meaningless to hurt your draft pick. Why? What are we doing this for? What are we trying to accomplish? You want to build a winning culture. Trust me, I get it, but you ain't been winning very much this year, so set yourself up for a better 2022. You want to bring back DeAndre Swift, risk re-aggravating an injury that lingers into 2022 and maybe affects the start of your season then? What are you gaining here? I just don't really understand, especially since you may be without your starting quarterback as well. Jared Goff may not even play this weekend. Craig Reynolds, done pretty good over the last couple of weeks. Continue to give this guy some touches. I mean, he did that. Those 216 total yards came against the Denver Broncos and Arizona Cardinals. They're not slouches against the run whatsoever. And now a matchup against Atlanta, it's the easiest one he's had so far. Atlanta allows over 20 fantasy points per game. Don't bring back DeAndre Swift. If Jamal Williams is out there, don't overly give it. Just let Craig Reynolds run. Can somebody make a free Craig Reynolds shirt out there? Because free Reynolds. This guy deserves to get some extra touches here for his performance over the last few weeks. He's going to be a start for me right now, but obviously, like we say in all these matchups, things are changing so quickly with all the COVID additions to the IR and players hurt and who's playing and who's not playing. As of the time of this recording, I'm rolling with Craig Reynolds. Until we hear something different, we'll adjust that later on in the week, but Craig Reynolds is the guy that I'm going to start, but he's going to be a little bit lower in the rankings. I mean, WTF, right? I mean, it's Craig Reynolds, but still. For Atlanta, Cordero Patterson basically just looked all of you in the face. Like he made direct eye contact with you and then told your soul to suck it last week. That is exactly what happened. The least amount of touches he's had in a game since week 10. Can't blame him for that. I blame the coaches for that. However, I think Russell Gage becoming more active in this offense is taking away some of that pass work that Cordero Patterson had that was making him safer every single week. But there's no way you sit this guy, especially against the Detroit Lions. It's Detroit. They allow over 24 fantasy points per game to opposing running backs, third most in the NFL. Mike Davis, I mean, his peaks and valleys are like huge differences, right? He's either on top of the mountain or dude like dug a ditch at the bottom of the mountain. I mean, it's bad, right? So we're not going to start Mike Davis. He's a little bit too inconsistent there for me. We're going to stick with Cordero Patterson and hopes that he bounces back here in Week 16. Now we head out to Cincinnati for the Ravens and Bengals, and please tell me this is not the time that we lose Joe Mixon for a week or so. I mean, it doesn't sound serious. Sounds like he's going to play through a sprained ankle and be okay for us, but hopefully it doesn't limit him too much. I actually saw a quote-unquote analyst on Twitter this past weekend say, see, Joe Mixon can still be a bust here for 2021 fantasy football. What? The guy is running back 3 overall in fantasy football. Now, is he the most efficient running back in the NFL? No, but nobody is saying that. Volume is king. He gets a ton of volume, and that's what continues to make him a solid fantasy football running back here. Once again, I swear some people are just so desperate for attention and clicks out there. It is mind-blowing to me. But like I said, he gets the volume. So that's going to continue to give him that opportunity to score fantasy points, which is what we want. Not an easy matchup for him here this week, though. Going up against the Baltimore Ravens. They allow only 17 fantasy points per game, but this is a must-win for the Cincinnati Bengals. They want sole possession of first place in that division. This may be, let me think, this may be the most meaningful game for the Cincinnati Bengals since like a long time, right? They haven't been good forever. This is their opportunity to go out there, get first place, and lock themselves up into a potential playoff spot. So this is a big deal for the Cincinnati Bengals. They need their studs to go out there and perform, and I expect them to here this week. For Baltimore, another WTF moment last week, right? We've seen Devonta Freeman be the lead back in this backfield for weeks. We've seen Latavius Murray just kind of tail off and be forgotten about. Murray only had 5 touches combined over the last 2 games. And then all of a sudden he comes out last week and out carries Devonta Freeman. The big question for this team, though, is Lamar Jackson. Does he return this week? The even crazier question is, do they need him to return? Because Tyler Huntley looked pretty damn good this past week. Sure, obviously the dynamic of Lamar Jackson a little bit different, but I'm not taking anything away from Huntley. That dude went out and balled out. Freeman still outsnapped Latavius Murray, just didn't, get those touches that we really wanted him to have there on the ground. Now, Freeman didn't smash in the matchup between these last 2 teams in week 7 either, but he did end up with a touchdown, and that's what we're hoping for here once again. A little bit more of a risky start, not a safe start, but I'm rolling with Devonta Freeman here in week 16. But now we head out to Minnesota for the Vikings and the Rams, and maybe Darrell Henderson isn't 100% healthy, or Sean McVay is just a part of the Week 15 FU tour, right? Maybe that's what it is, because Sony Michel came out and played 73% of the snaps and out-touched Henderson 20-8. Why? I mean, Darrell Henderson had earned that starting spot to start the season, and now all of a sudden, Sony Michel seems to be the guy kind of down the stretch. He has now 3 straight games with at least 20 touches, and in 2 of those 3 games, he's averaged over 5 yards per carry. You got Sean McVay coming out and saying, hey, we're going to use both of these guys, and that really sucks for this backfield because we weren't dealing with a committee before the Darrell Henderson injury. Now a matchup going up against the Minnesota Vikings. They allow over 19 fantasy points per game, 9th most in the NFL. You definitely want to start somebody against the Minnesota Vikings. At this point, I think we have to gamble on Sony Michel. Either Darrell Henderson isn't 100% healthy, he's still recovering, or Sean McVay is just kind of, going back and forth, a little bit of inconsistency with the usage in this backfield. They've been riding Sony Michel here as of late, and he really hasn't done anything to lose that opportunity. But this is what I'm going to say here. This offense has the potential to have enough volume for both of these guys, for both of them to be starts. I have them both listed as starts, but I don't have super high ceiling expectations for either one of these guys because it could literally go either way. I could see both of these guys hovering right around that 10-point mark. Not somebody who I'm overly reliant on, but could be a decent flex play. That's why they're both listed as starts. For Minnesota, Cook kind of disappointed himself last week, right? Not a huge game, but he still had 30 touches. 30 touches in week 16. I would definitely love to have that from just about anybody at this point. He looks healthy. You never sit Dalvin Cook. The Rams allow right around 17 fantasy points per game, and I'm sure all of us would be happy with that kind of production if we could get it out of him here this week. Out to New England now for the Buffalo Bills, New England Patriots, and hopefully have no snowpocalypse warning here this week like these guys had just a couple weeks ago. Because all of a sudden, damn it, Devin Singletary out there doing work. Back-to-back games playing at least 80% of the snaps and having at least 10 fantasy points. Is this the new run game in Buffalo? Are they trying to limit some of that pressure on Josh Allen and rely a little bit more on the running backs? Because if that's the case, sign me up for that. I will definitely take that out of Devin Singletary. And a matchup going up against the New England Patriots. They were pretty solid against the run until late. They've allowed over 200 yards rushing now to their opponents in 2 out of the last 3 ball games. Slightly concerning for their defense. Now, is Devin Singletary a safe start? No. He's kind of more of the flavor of the month in Buffalo. But Zach Moss, he's been a healthy scratch multiple weeks. Breida only played 3 snaps last weekend. I'm going to start Devin Singletary here this week, but he will be a little bit lower in the rankings because I just don't have that vote of confidence here for him at this point of the season. But he's producing here as of late, and somebody I'll take a stab on. For New England, so much for Ramondre Stevenson and his Week 15 smash, right, with no Damian Harris, because that didn't happen. Dude only had 40 total yards and didn't help anyone in their fantasy matchups. This week, does Damian Harris return? Sounds like there's a chance that he returns, but we still kind of unclear, don't know for sure. Buffalo has allowed over 130 yards rushing to their opponents now in 4 of their last 5 games. The last matchup against these two, Damian Harris had 10 carries for 111 yards, just before leaving that game with that injury. So we're kind of waiting to see what's going on because Damian Harris is the better back in this backfield. He's the guy to start if he is healthy. Until we get word, it's kind of one of those things that we roll the dice with Ramondre Stevenson. So if Damian Harris is active and playing, he gets the start in fantasy football. If he sits, once again, we ride the roller coaster that is Ramondre Stevenson, and he would become a start here this week, and hopefully it was better than what we got out of him in Week 15. Now we head up to New York for the Jets and the Jags, and J-Rob. That's what I'm talking about. You, Urban Meyer. This is what you do when you give the guy the ball. 21 touches, finished running back 4 overall, and now he gets a matchup against the Jets. The Jets who allow over 30 fantasy points per game to opposing running backs. You can't see it, but right now my tail is wagging. Carlos Hyde, he's been placed on the IR, so we're definitely going to start J-Rob here this week. For the Jets, Robert Saleh, I'm disappointed. I'm not angry, not mad. Just disappointed in you. Robert, you came out and said, hey, Michael Carter going to expect a big workload here this week. You got 9 touches. I mean, I guess it's not bad. I mean, it could have been worse, I guess. I mean, for his first game back off the IR, I kind of understand it. But, of course, that coach speak is what screwed a lot of people here this past week. A matchup now going up against Jacksonville. They allow right around 19 fantasy points per game. This is a good time for him to bounce back, right? Wrong. He was placed on the COVID IR earlier today, so this is another one of those question marks we have heading into the weekend. Who are we going to be missing in New York for the Jets? A lot of people testing positive out there, so another thing we need to watch, right? We don't need to watch it too closely, though. Why? It's still the Jets, and we're not overly high on their run game if it's not Michael Carter anyway. Kind of leaves us Tevin Coleman. Do I love that? No. But he's the guy in this backfield. They're all going to be sits as of right now until we get more information. We could also see some Austin Walter. Just ugly. Not Austin Walter. Just the entire matchup altogether. So it's not something I'm overly excited to start or tempt fate with, especially at this point in the fantasy season. But now we head over to Philly for the Eagles and the Giants and Nick Sirianni. I gave this dude a bunch of crap here this season, but I think he's finally starting to get it. I think it's finally starting to sink in. When you use Miles Sanders, good things happen. He's now had 20-plus touches in back-to-back games with at least 140-plus total yards. Now, I don't like that Jalen Hurts is stealing the goal line touchdowns, but still, the production, the usage, the volume, we love to see that out of Miles Sanders. Going up against the Giants, they allow 20 fantasy points per game, 8th most in the NFL. Now, Jordan Howard, still a thing in this offense, which I don't love, but he's just not as explosive as Miles Sanders, and he's not getting the passing work. So in this backfield, I'm continuing to roll with Miles Sanders. It's kind of what we've been waiting for, right? We've said it all along. When this guy gets volume, he produces. He just wasn't getting it. Now that he is, we want to start him. The same thing can be said for Saquon Barkley. 19 touches now in back-to-back games, 8-plus targets in 2 out of his last 3. A matchup now going up against the Philadelphia Eagles, who are right around 17 fantasy points per game. Now, Devontae Booker still involved in this backfield, but Saquon Barkley, the guy getting the passing work, which gives him that safer floor. And at this point, you can't afford to sit this guy. He remains a start. Down to Carolina we go for the Panthers and the Bucks, and I sure hope you listened to me over the past couple weeks where I told you that if you had Leonard Fournette, you better go out there and get Ronald Jones, because if anything happens to playoff Lenny, Ronald Jones is going to be the guy. And then all of a sudden, Leonard Fournette goes down, and now he's going to miss some time. They've placed him on the IR, so he's done for your fantasy season. I sure hope you picked up Ronald Jones, because this Tampa Bay offense overall kind of struggling. We know they've lost Chris Godwin. We know Mike Evans not 100% healthy. Sounds like they're going to get Antonio Brown back. We know they've lost Leonard Fournette now. They need some playmakers here, and Ronald Jones is definitely somebody that can produce in this offense. We've always said that. It's never been a talent issue with Ronald Jones. I mean, slightly. He does have a lot of drops at times, but he is definitely somebody who, when given volume, can produce. They've just never been committed to him, regardless of who the coaching staff is in Tampa Bay. But now they're not going to have a choice. They're going to need Ronald Jones to step up here heading into the playoffs. Now, I'm going to get a lot of questions. I can already tell. What about Le'Veon Bell? Le'Veon Bell's, he just signed with Tampa Bay. Yeah, Le'Veon Bell, the hype is going to happen here again. When is the last time Le'Veon Bell produced on a football field? It was like 2017. Just in case you guys are wondering, it's almost 2022. I'm not interested in Le'Veon Bell. I'm just not. He hasn't done anything recently for me to be that excited about him going here. In my opinion, this is finally the time that we say yes to Rojo here, the end of 2021. For Carolina, this is just a mess all around, right? You have Cam, who's going to continue to take carries every single week. You got Chuba on the ground, Amir Abdullah through the air, and minimal scoring opportunities on the ground for any running backs in Carolina. It's just not something where we can go out there and say, hey, yeah, you can start Chuba. He's a safe start, lower ceiling, but safe start. I can't say that. I can't say that in a matchup going up against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who are a lot easier to throw on than they are to run on. I mean, if you're absolutely desperate, you can go with Chuba and hope he gets you right around 15 touches. But in my opinion, they're all going to be sits here in Carolina. Over to Houston now for the Texans and the Chargers, and a couple COVID concerns here that we're watching throughout the week. You got Austin Eckler, you got stud offensive lineman Rashawn Slater, a couple names we're really paying close attention to. Now, Eckler, we know, is a no-brainer. If he's active, he's in your fantasy football lineups, especially against the Houston Texans, who allow right around 23 fantasy points per game, fourth most in the NFL. Now, if Eckler cannot go, next man up going to be Justin Jackson, somebody who's performed when given the opportunity here as of late as well. So if you're an Eckler owner and Jackson is out there, don't let him sit on your waiver wire. You need to make sure you have Justin Jackson just in case. For Houston, we've kept it real with you all year here when it comes to the Houston Texans. We don't want any part of this backfield. They haven't done anything all year. I'm not going to trust it in the fantasy playoffs. They're all going to remain firmly in the sit column for probably a while. Maybe this may roll into 2022. Maybe to start 2020, they're all going to be sits for a long time. Up to Seattle we go now, though, for the Bears and the Seahawks, and I knew it. I've talked about this last week. I've talked about this for years. The hype always happens when we see something good from Rashad Penny, and then he always just finds a way to disappoint us, whether it's with injury, lack of production. He almost split touches with DJ Dallas last week, averaged only like 3 yards per carry, no touchdowns. This is what we get with Rashad Penny. He does something good. The hype builds. People buy into it, and then he absolutely disappoints you. It's just what we've seen year after year with this guy. This entire backfield hasn't done anything all year long to really make us want to start any of these guys. Now, do we get back Tyler Lockett? Do we get back Alex Collins? Do we get back Adrian Peterson? More and more questions in a backfield that already doesn't score a whole lot of points. I'm a pass, dog. Ain't nobody going in my starting lineup from Seattle. For Chicago, it's nice to see David Montgomery continue to get volume. 23 touches in week 15, I'll take that. 6+ targets now in 3 straight games, I will take that. I do wish there were more touchdowns, but beggars can't be choosers. At times like this, I'll take the volume and hope for the touchdowns. The passing game in Chicago is getting better. Justin Fields is progressing. That's going to help open up holes for David Montgomery. There's little to no split in touches here other than with Justin Fields. Seattle allows over 22 fantasy points per game, 4th most in the NFL. So once again, going to start David Montgomery. Out to Kansas City we go now for the Chiefs and the Steelers. And do you remember when Najee Harris only had 37 yards on 11 touches in week 12 against the Bengals, in which the Bengals blew out the Steelers? And we all kind of said, well, we know it can't get any worse than that. Right. And then week 15 happened, and Najee Harris basically said, here, hold my beer. He had 14 touches for only 26 total yards. Now, Tennessee is super solid against the run, so let's just hope that he's got nowhere to go but up from there. In a matchup going up against Kansas City, they allow right around 19 fantasy points per game. We know we can't sit Najee Harris. We can't afford to do that at this time of the season. For Kansas City, CEH kind of disappointed himself in week 15. The game script just didn't allow him to get a lot of volume, only 11 total touches. Darrell Williams, he didn't do a whole lot either. I mean, he didn't get a whole lot of work. He only had 5 touches last week, but now they get a matchup against the Pittsburgh Steelers. They have allowed 198 plus rushing yards in 3 of the last 4 games they've played, allowing over 23 fantasy points per game to opposing running backs, which is 5th most in the NFL. I'm going to continue to run out CEH. He's getting the passing work as well. The volume isn't huge. Both of these guys have that opportunity, but as of right now, just not enough snaps, not enough potential for Darrell Williams to feel safe starting him, so I'm only going to roll out there CEH. Plus, another thing to watch here, they could be without Travis Kelce and Tyreek Hill. This week, they're going to need playmakers, and CEH could fill that role, get some boosted value, get some boosted volume. If both of these guys, Kelce and Hill, are ruled out, we're going to have to start looking a little bit closer at Darrell Williams is going to be somebody who could be a flex play just because they're going to need some playmakers, and we've seen Darrell Williams make those plays before, so pay close attention here. Let's see if we have Kelce or Hill going into the weekend. If we don't, all of a sudden Darrell Williams becomes an option. Now we go out to Vegas for the Raiders and the Broncos, and damn, will just anybody block for Josh Jacobs at this point? Dude has no room to run anywhere. He hasn't averaged over 4 yards a carry since week 11. He's really being saved by passing game work as of right now. He's had at least 4 targets in 7 straight games. Denver, they allow around 18 fantasy points per game, and Josh Jacobs is just another one of those guys you can't afford to sit because he's getting the volume each and every week, so he'll remain a start. As for Denver, I mean, they're coming off a down week as well. It's still a 50-50 split between Melvin Gordon and Javon Javonte Williams. Everyone sees the potential in Javonte Williams, though. I'm going to say that right now, this dude is going to be a top 12 running back in fantasy football if Melvin Gordon leaves after the season. That's something else to pay attention to here throughout the offseason. But here's the thing. This is a great matchup for them this week. They're going up against Las Vegas, who allow over 23 fantasy points per game to opposing running backs. Great timing for a good matchup. Both of these guys, once again, going to remain a start, both decent flex options in Week 16. Now we head out to Dallas for Sunday Night Football for the football team and the Dallas Cowboys, a matchup of two teams that just faced off like 2 weeks ago, where nobody on either side of the ball had a huge performance at the running back position. Tony Pollard came back last week, looked pretty good considering he has a torn plantar fascia, which just sounds painful, but he looked explosive, he looked efficient. Zeke starting to look a little bit healthier as well, with a little bit more touchdown upside than that of Tony Pollard. And honestly, I'm slightly more excited for the side of the Dallas Cowboys here than I am for the Washington football team. And that's because look at what we just saw in the game between Washington and Philly. Philly ran all over Washington here this past week, and I expect Dallas to try to do the same thing this week. Both Pollard and Zeke going to be starts for me here this week. For Washington, it was great to see Antonio Gibson go out there and get 21 touches. And honestly, way to hold on to the ball. Give you a game with no fumbles. 6+ targets now in 3 out of his last 4 games. A matchup going up against Dallas. They're allowing right around 17 fantasy points per game, but we didn't see Antonio Gibson really perform well against this defense just a couple weeks ago. However, Dallas still has allowed over 100 yards rushing to their opponents now in 9 straight ball games. This is not the best matchup. This is not the worst matchup. To have a running back that's going to go out there and get you right around 20 carries is a guy that you have to start here once again in Week 16. But then we cap this week off Monday Night Football, Miami Dolphins, New Orleans Saints, and Brian Flores hates you and your fantasy team, just in case you're wondering. I mean, Myles Gaskin was brought off the COVID IR. He was back. He was activated. He was good to go. He went out and was averaging 5.4 yards per carry. Brian Flores said, who cares? It's all about Duke Johnson here this past week, where Duke had 23 touches for 127 total yards and 2 touchdowns. Now, they come out and use the excuse that Duke was at practice all week long and Gaskin wasn't. Gaskin's been playing in this offense all year long. He looked fine when he was on the field. Don't feed us that BS. We know better than that. You wanted to give Duke the chance. Don't get me wrong. We've loved ourselves some Duke Johnson here at times, but I just don't understand the usage in this backfield here. Once again, don't get too overly excited, though. Duke Johnson did do this against the Jets, and the Jets allow more points to fantasy running backs than any other team in the NFL. But now they get a matchup going up against the New Orleans Saints, the best team in the NFL against opposing running backs, allowing just about 15 fantasy points per game. Now you add in the fact that you have Myles Gaskin, Salvon Ahmed, Duke Johnson. It's time for a committee here in Miami, and if they don't find the end zone, they're going to hurt your fantasy team. I have no idea why Brian Flores isn't overly committed to Myles Gaskin. If you need a prayer here in this game and you don't have a choice, you have to start somebody, I wouldn't be surprised if they try to ride the hot hand of Duke Johnson. I'm not overly excited to start any of these guys as of right now. I'm going to list them all as sits in a difficult matchup and hope it doesn't backfire on us here this week. For New Orleans, it's got to be better than Week 15, right? Nowhere to go but up. You have Alvin Kamara and Mark Ingram. They totaled, between the two of them, 49 total yards and no touchdowns. Tampa Bay shut them down and couldn't get anything going on the ground. It's a better matchup, obviously, this week, though, going up against the Miami Dolphins. You can't really afford to ever sit Alvin Kamara. You're not going to have a healthy Alvin Kamara in the fantasy playoffs and sit him like ever. He's going to be a start. As for Mark Ingram, only 11 touches per game, and he's not doing a whole lot with him. Isn't really enough volume to want to trust him enough to make him a start. So he's going to remain a sit for us, and we're just going to stick with Kamara and hope that he can find in the end zone a time or two. Don't forget, Alvin Kamara won a lot of people some fantasy ball games at the end of last season with some huge games. Can we get it again, Alvin, here this year? All right, those are going to be my starts and sits for the running back position here, Week 16 fantasy football. I got to reiterate this one more time. This information is changing basically by the hour in the NFL. New players are popping up on the COVID IR. We're starting to get more and more practice reports, starting to get more injury reports. A lot of things are going to change, and the worst part about it is it's a short week with the holiday, right? You have Christmas Eve on Friday, Christmas on Saturday, not a whole lot of time in between. We're trying to get all these videos out prior to Christmas Eve, because we know once Christmas Eve hits, a lot of people have a lot of plans and a lot of things going on. We will not have an injury show this week, but we will be posting graphics on the community tab with injury updates to players from our our own Dr. Ethan Turner. So make sure you stay subscribed and have that bell notification clicked so you know when those are posted. As for the live show, it's Christmas. Obviously, we're not going to live stream on Christmas Day, and we're not going to live stream on Christmas Eve. A lot of people have a lot of family things going on Christmas Eve, so there will not be a live show Friday or Saturday. Kyle will be doing the members only live show on Sunday morning. Now, only members only can comment in the chat there, but anybody can watch that show. So if you're looking for some last minute information, you can still check that out as well. But I want to be sure to wish everybody a very Merry Christmas, a happy holidays here this year. It's been a tough year for a lot of people. Once again, I enjoy being able to spend another year with you, the community, Headliner Nation. Thank you so much for the support you've showed us all year long. But just a reminder, we aren't going anywhere. Once this season ends, we continue videos 12 months a year. We'll do tons of videos a year. So don't go anywhere. Make sure you stay up to date all year long, and we'd love to continue to hang out with you guys and do that. But hopefully you guys have a great holiday, a great rest of your week, a great day, and we'll talk to you later.